Hello, hi.
Hey, Eridian, how's it going?
Hi, Brett. Good to have you on. Welcome to the latest episode of the Community Staking Podcast. So
Thanks for
I'm
having me.
it's great to have you. I'm Eridian, the host today, and this podcast format is having guests on to talk about community staking and thoughts on the staking ecosystem, as well as where Lido fits into that in a future where there are Lido community stakers. So introduce yourself. Let's hear something about you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for having me, Eridian. My name is Brett Lee. I'm the Chief Growth Officer for Obol.
Okay, great. And what is Obol? Give us a breakdown of that to start with.
Obol, we're a infrastructure R&D development team, currently focused on building distributed validator technology for Ethereum specifically, with the goal of creating a resilient, trust minimized, solid foundation for Web3 and for Ethereum in the future.
Great. So we'll get into more of that and what is DVT and how it fits into what Lido's doing and the community and the staking community in general. But before we get into that, talk about yourself. So one of the questions that I've been asking everyone before we get started to humanize the crypto space and to give human stories to the faces we see and the protocols that we hear about is, so how did you get into crypto? What was your backgrounds and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So I like to call myself a Web 2.5, growth leader, if you will. I have a really long actually career in Web 2. I studied engineering back, 15 years ago, and spent most of my career in various Web 2 go-to-market functions. Started off as a sales engineer, went into product management, did product marketing, hit a number of different industries, from automation to mobile to testing to data. And I was always kind of at the intersection between like, how do you take technology and like find use cases for it, bring it to market, actually get adoption. And I was always interested in kind of new emerging technologies, kind of at the forefront, cutting edge. And so back in 2014, 2015, ran across this concept called Ethereum. At the time, I'd heard about Bitcoin, heard about crypto, less about blockchain, more about, and really didn't understand the applications for crypto. Like, why do you need this digital money, right? At the time. But the fact that Ethereum introduced kind of this Turing complete, platform that you could create and build new applications on top of this idea of blockchain and crypto really kind of intrigued me, because I felt like there was endless potential for where this could go. And it was kind of our generation's, internet revolution, if you will. And that really captured me. So I started listening to a number of different podcasts on my own, started reading, actually Andreessen Horowitz, Ace of Kings Z's kind of crypto canon back in the day was actually a great source for me to learn about a lot of things related to crypto and to blockchain. And so then I was kind of, as I was going through my career, paying attention, following the space for a while, I started to do a little bit of investing. But really what got me into it was I had a chance to join Consensus in 2018. And now I was thrown into the deep end of Ethereum. And it was just a fascinating time, a fascinating organization in particular, to be a part of kind of that core of Ethereum as it was developing and building. And I was part of the core product marketing circle, as the mesh calls it. Got to touch a number of different projects within the mesh, whether it was projects just starting or like Ethereum trying to build enterprise adoption with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And so touched a number of different parts of the Ethereum ecosystem as it was developing. Felt it was too early, frankly,
Yeah.
for someone like me, for a marketer. I consider myself technical, but not necessarily a developer. And at the time in 2019, it was a lot of really great things being built, but not necessarily ready to be taken to market yet. And then there was a bunch of just ICO shilling tokens, like a bunch of fluff that I just didn't want to be a part of. And so actually in 2019, I left the space and went back to Web 2, went to another startup, and had an opportunity to see a company grow from 7 people to over 100. I led the marketing team from just myself, built a team of 10 by the end of it. And kind of saw what it takes to build a company from the ground up.
Yeah.
And after 3 years, decided it was time to come back to the space. And that's always the long-term goal. My passion is always going to be instilled in Web3. and then found Obol about a year and a half ago, and really happy to be where I am, kind of at the core of Ethereum once again, at the infrastructure layer, kind of thinking about how do you make this entire network, entire foundation more resilient.
Wow, that's a good history lesson. It's like the history of Ethereum, and you're like intertwined with it. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the narrative as well, that people heard about it a long time ago, and just because you didn't jump into it back in 2014, 2015 at that exact moment necessarily and go full time that day, that you can still end up there now. So
Yeah.
just making sure that people see that it's a journey. It's not just a destination in that sense into Web3.
And just one thing to add there, I would argue we're still early. Like we're in this kind of phase of just starting to get actually like core adoption, and there's a lot of work left to be done. So it's still early. There's still a lot of people that should come into the space. I think there should be more people from Web2 infused into Web3 and to make it more mainstream. So yeah, there's still a long way to go.
Definitely. Well, we're here to put our flag in the ground and say, let's go, let's take the next step from here.
100%.
So you talk about the infrastructure level, and that's where we're focused on with the staking side of things. It's not the super crazy NFT side or anything like that. It's I call it like the boring side of crypto, like the staking yields are the fundamentals, but they're incredibly important to Ethereum. So yeah, let's get more technical then. Let's talk about DVT and how that fits into to where Obol is today, where Ethereum is today, and where Lido is.
Yeah, 100%. So maybe give you a little bit of the origin story of Obol, because I think that actually brings good context and color to where we're at. So Obol was started by two co-founders, person named Colin Myers, Oshin Kine, CTO Koshin, and CEO Colin, who back in 2020 was actually part of Consensus, and even earlier than that, early days of ETH2, early days of talking about transition and proof of stake. And even at that time, there was a lot of concern around the potential centralization, centralizing forces of proof of stake, more stake, more power, and that naturally just creates more, centralization in the network. And so even back then, there was thought about how do we make sure that the consensus layer of Ethereum stays decentralized, and stays, resilient. And after a lot of research, there was a talk at DEF CON, I believe, back in 2020 in Osaka by Dr. Feist, about this idea of distributed validators and distributed validation. And that is where this came out of, this idea of taking essentially a single validator and being able to split it and run it across multiple different machines by taking a key and sharding it, right? So since 2021, Colin Roshin has been building Obol as an independent project that essentially didn't start at Consensus but started on its own, and collaborating with part of the ecosystem, the staking ecosystem, to build this technology and realize this technology. So in the process of doing so, we've taken a very collaborative approach to the ecosystem. We decided early on not to necessarily build our own network or build our own validator network, but rather build Obol as a middleware that can be innovated upon, used easily, and embedded into all the different staking products that are available today, whether that's liquid staking protocols, staking as a service providers, whether that's at-home, validators and at-home stakers, providing something that's most flexible, right? So that takes us to where we are today, and we're in our current public. We're about to go into our public beta phase, or actually by the time this publishes, we'll be in our public beta phase, which launches on December 1st, and this allows people to run Obol DVs on mainnet. So very close to getting to a full kind of V1 launch early next year.
Very exciting. I can attest to that and say that, yeah, running DVs on mainnet has been, amazing. Particularly like the running with people in their homes, like you said, as one of the key goals is it can be used by anyone. and it has been. So I think that's great to see
Yeah.
that it's not just talk, that like, oh yeah, home stakers can use it if they want. Like, it's actively being used by home stakers as part of the testing you're doing. So that is
100%.
great to see that it's being preached and done as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, on that note, I think, to talk about some of the key things we want to see value-wise from distributed validators, like we definitely want to see more decentralization in the network, right? I think today there's still a ton of barriers to entry for people who want to participate in running a validator. And because of that, it tends to sway the power towards larger professional validators because they have the capabilities, they have the capital, they have the ability and resources to run highly effective validators. Whereas for at-home validators today, there's a lot of things preventing people, whether that's the 32 ETH bond that's required, whether that's just the technical know-how to keep a validator up and running. It's one thing to activate a validator. It's a whole nother thing to run it highly effectively and be able to compete from a reward standpoint, uptime, effectiveness standpoint with some of the larger providers. And so that's one thing we hope to address, is to essentially level the playing field, if you will, from a financial, from a technical standpoint, to allow more people who want to. It's still a commitment. You don't just run it and it just runs on its own, right? You still have to maintain it and keep an eye on it. But for people who have desire to want to run a validator, to be able to do so and have the capability to do so. So that's really the goal.
Yeah, and I think that in a step back from where people are viewing DVT today, when I speak to people about it, speak to people in person at conferences saying, have you heard about DVT? And they see it, mostly it's seen from, well, the trope is like, oh, well, yeah, I can pay for 4x the infrastructure to run the same validator, right? It's like, so you're running on one machine and it's got 100% effectiveness in your AWS data center. So now I'll just pay for 4 of those and split it in the, like, they can't see the benefit. And it's not necessarily for that. There are use cases where that could still be useful, like redundancy, or even just zero downtime upgrades. So to be able to upgrade and make changes without having to worry about any downtime at all. So it could increase your effectiveness. Whether that's worth the cost is an economic decision up to them, but there are benefits in that sense. But as you said, the solo staker calculation is very different, because the hardware requirements, the hardware requirements is one thing, but if you talk about 32 ETH, which is currently around $60,000, and the hardware itself is maybe $1,000, you've got this very big discrepancy, right? A lot more people could buy the hardware than have the ETH to stake. Whereas with DVT, what it allows you to do is have better systems for multiple people trustlessly, or at least with minimized trust, able to trust minimized to be able to run the validators. So, and the key thing is there, it's like, well, you could just run in a pool, you could just give Lido, let's say 4 ETH or something, and then they'll run the validators for you. But the ability to run a validator, say from home, in a trust minimized or permissionless system with less than 32 ETH, for example, 8 or 4 or 6 or some smaller number, gives the people the ability to sit at home and run a validator and watch the attestations and the block proposals, which makes them participate and be part of the network. And as you said, the 100%. Added benefit of that is that you also don't have to worry as much. So you get the benefit of being able to do it. You bring the barriers down, and you also bring the technical requirements down as well. Because if your node does go offline, or you do have very unexpected things happen, or just your machine breaks. So one of the things that I notice is that I've got NUCs, quite a few sat next to me, and if one of them dies, that would be very sad. And it would take me a week to probably buy another one if I was available to it, and my node validators would be offline. Whereas with the Obol clusters that I'm running, I don't have to worry. I'd still be sad, but it wouldn't be existential. It wouldn't make such a big difference. So it's really exciting that more people are going to get to experience that through DVT.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing I would add there is, this opens up opportunities for people to participate, even if they don't have their own ETH. Because like today, for liquid staking protocols, it's very difficult for them to be able to decentralize their validator set while still ensuring that everything's going to be highly effective and highly performant, because they need to ensure that in order to support the network, right, that they have. And I think DVT has a huge value add there, because you can basically mitigate the risk of any one validator going down or a node operator going down in a liquid staking protocol like Lido, right? And having that have a negative impact on the network. So you now have redundancy. And so they can then decentralize that. Yeah.
And with that, the going down is one part, like being offline. There are various models as well. We'll talk about like how you can have these clusters. So if you did, for example, have a 7 of 10 threshold cluster, and we've skipped over it so far, but the idea of DVT is it's kind of like a multi-sig where to do a duty on your validator, the threshold has to sign, and once you reach the signature level, then that gets sent to the network, just like with a transaction, except it's performing some validator duty. And there's a few more complexities below that, whether it's like blocks and agreeing on various things, but in general, the threshold is similar to a multi-sig. And now, as you're saying, with that, you could have 10 people all giving 10% of the ETH to do it, so it'd be very equitable. Or you could have a system where 7 of them provide the ETH and 3 of them just get to participate in the network without providing any. And they don't in themselves reach the threshold, and they can't do negative impacts to that validator, for example, slashing. And the way those numbers work is that 3 is just the maximum, or like the number to not have any problems at all, whereas you could actually, as long as you could have up to 6 without any bond essentially, and then they can't slash, they could just stop you attesting. And these are things that you can consider when it's like, well, how do you get people to participate without having to have a bond at all?
Exactly. Yeah, it's just much more flexible at this point, where you can have different types of validator setups while still ensuring that the risk is mitigated across, right? And it opens up opportunities. That's the end of the day what it does.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of those opportunities in the scope of what's happening right now. So as we speak, the Lido Simple DVT, which is a middle step between where Lido was, which is fully permission KYC node operators, to a future where there are Lido modules, where there will be a permissionless model similar to, say, Rocket Pool, where you can come with a bond and get a validator. And that's currently being talked about. And then other modules, which could be DVT-based modules or other more exotic things in future. But for now, between the past and the future, we're in the present, and that's where these simple DVT trials come in. And the way that I've had this described, and I quite liked it, is it's the idea of an operator in a trench coat. It's the idea of like a bunch of little kids stacked on top of each other, pretending to be a whole adult. That's what simple DVT in this case is. So it takes the standard Lido premise of someone comes and says, hey, I want to be an operator, and you get added to the Lido registry through all the smart contracts. That's all kept the same. Nothing's changed, except that the person that comes is actually a multi-sig, and behind that multi-sig is these simple DVT trials. That's why it's called simple DVT, because we're just doing the DVT part. It's not changing the Lido side, and that's where we are today. And the simple DVT trial that's currently happening is the Obol one. So do you want to talk a bit more about that from your side?
Yeah, I mean, we're first of all really excited to start seeing DVT applied to a liquid staking protocol like Lido, and seeing it start to change their node operator set essentially, and start to like realize this vision of V2. We're currently in testnet, and there's 32 clusters with 220 nodes, I believe. Last time I checked, running. Things are doing well. It's live. We're monitoring the situation and the performance and the effectiveness, all of these nodes. I think you're personally involved in a lot of this as well. Yeah, things are going well. And I think from where we go from here, the highest, we're going to set a bar, where we have set a bar for how highly performant do certain clusters to node operators need to be. And if they cross that threshold, they will be considered for kind of the main deployment down the road. So I think, we're really excited to kind of...
Let's pause on that for a second, because that's something that I want for people watching this, or for anyone that's interested in how to participate. That's a really important point to focus on, because one thing that I had a concern around when I started with this is that if that is taken to an extreme where only the best people, or in quotes, will get to pass through this filter, this gate, then that creates this very strong centralizing force where someone says, well, I definitely want to be in this trial and I definitely want to pass, so I will pick the same AWS data center that everyone else is in, therefore I will definitely pass. And people, if you said, well, you could stake from home, and they say, oh, but I might have slightly less effectiveness than someone else, and it's like because it's a grading curve. Essentially, you don't want to be on the wrong side of it. So it's just to touch on that and say that there is the threshold you talked about does need to exist. You can't have a complete, every level there is a minimum requirement, but it won't be as stringent as people think. And if you are a very standard home staker, you'll far and above be able to achieve that, and for a lower cost than running on a cloud provider. So I just want to also, since you gave me the opportunity to reiterate, like, you shouldn't be scared from running from home. There's a group of us, these home stakers, in this current trial, and you couldn't tell based on our setups, we look the same as someone running in the cloud, particularly through DVT. And the plan is in future trials to have even more people staking from home. So just to touch on that while you gave me the chance.
Yeah, no, 100%. And what I wanted to build off of that is, like, one of the things that I'm personally actually interested in is how do we continue to grow the at-home validator community. And Simple DVT obviously offers a great opportunity for people to start to participate. In addition to that, we're starting to think about programs of, like, how do we get more at-home validators through the kind of experience and knowledge curve of starting to run validators, whether that's building training materials. We have a community of mostly at-home validators, frankly, and people who are interested in staking at home. And we're starting to develop this concept that we're about to launch called the Obol Technique Credential, which is essentially a credentialing system that allows people to certify the things that they've done. It's not necessarily a subjective vouching saying you're going to be a great validator, but rather, if they've gone through the process of running a DV on testnet, and having a certain level of performance, showing that they're knowledgeable about what distributed validators are, that they get this credential, and that should open up some ability for them to earn opportunities like in Simple DVT and others to be able to run and pursue as node operator. So, more and more programs like this hopefully will get more credibility for at-home validators, more confidence for at-home validators, and we also definitely want to build more on-ramps and educational paths for people to gain more experience there.
Yes, I mean, that's a great point to talk about, is that if in future there is it's not necessarily going to be the effectiveness of your validator, that's to say that as long as you are reaching a minimum standard, which isn't going to be too high, then the next step is, well, then how do you make sure you get picked? And that's a different question, as you just said, through education or badges or some way of showing that you are a really good one. And this is for certain things like the Lido Simple DVT trials. Any of that stuff, it's not a requirement, but it would be helpful. We're looking desperately for more home validators to be part of it, to prove from my side, that's like, as the community lifeguard, that's the goal, is to make sure that there is a community of solo stakers. I describe it as like lifeguards are for protecting people, and professionals in AWS don't need as much protecting as the solo stakers swimming on their own. So that's why they're the people that I'm looking after the most. So yeah, I think that any opportunity for people to show that they've learned and to advance the educational side is hugely important as well. I mean, that's why I do DV Stakers, which is a completely educational community for DVT, and we run lots of Obol validators all over the world, running them in Kenya at the moment, and just proving that it can be done, and just pushing the boundaries of that through education as well.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great DV Stakers, and what you're doing there's a great initiative. So shout out to you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, that's where we are today with Obol trials. So with Lido, so there's 30 something clusters at the moment, and they're all starting to get online on Haleski right now, and they're testing. And I think we had any block proposals yet?
I don't know. I haven't checked.
I think it's quite low because there's not many validators running at the moment. It's just like a small number each cluster. Therefore, the chance of getting a block proposal, particularly on Haleski, which has lots of validators, like millions, right? It's like quite a lot. Yeah. So the chance of getting a block on Haleski is very low unless you have a lot of validators. So all the clusters start with 5, but they have a neat thing with Obol is that you can preload the validators. So when we did the DKGs, all the DKGs in every cluster generated 100 keys. And then you can apply, the way Lido works is you increment the how many keys you're given or validators are funded through the protocol. So you start with 5 and you submit them. And then the next step, once we've proved on the 5 that's capable, it'll then jump up to the full 100. And those are preloaded. So they just get funded and start testing just as soon as they become live on the Beacon chain.
Yeah. And maybe by the time this publishes, we'll have first block proposals. We'll see.
It's very competitive, right? Because we're all there's like 30 clusters and everyone wants to be the first. So, but it's been a real mixed group. We've got like I said, lots of people running on. We've got professional operators. Some of the existing Lido professional operators. There's people running on bare metal in offices, as I said, like NUCs in houses. Some DApp nodes and Avados, like all those machines as well. They're trying to be included as much as possible to prove again that it is easier than people expect, particularly with something like a DApp node machine. You really do just plug and play and click a few buttons. There's a bit of development work still going on with that, but that will be the kind of thing that I'll be pushing to say, like, sure, here's how you do it the technical way, but if you wanted to be part of this, how easy could it be, and then highlight that. So yes, and I know that DApp node, for example, do have a large community of people with DApp nodes, and if it was, hey, just apply with your DApp node and you could be part of the next trial, that's the kind of communities that I want to make sure that we reach out to and get involved in future.
Yeah, 100%. And if anything, we would encourage more diverse setups to participate, right? Because that also strengthens the network in general and strengthens, the node operator set for Lido. If you have client diversity,
it strengthens the Obol clients as well, because if everyone just ran the exact same system and the perfect setup, then you'd never catch all the edge cases. But in this trial, it's been interesting because, like, as we talked about, Obol has been around for a while. It's been used for a while on testnet, and lots of DKGs have been run. And then even in this trial, there was 100 like 30 DKGs run with lots of different participants, all on quite complex and different setups. And there was a few issues, but the fact that they can be solved and worked through, and now they've all been successful, is testament to the fact that there can be quite rapid development on this. Even if it is a hugely diverse setup of people that haven't been, KYC'd and checked, it's just a kind of, what's your Discord and where are you, so that we can put you in the right geographic locations. So that's the level that we're at. So people, have participated, and it's testament to the fact that it is all working, which is always amazing.
Yeah, it's great. We love to see it.
Great. So that's where we are to Lido is today with the trials, Simple DVT. There is also it's a two-part trial, so SSV as well, which is another DVT protocol. That trial will be starting as well, so they're going to be running in parallel, which is good as well to compare and to understand the differences both in setup and operation. This trial will be running for months, or it's not a long-term trial. I think it's 90 days or something. 60 to 90 days is the testnet side of things, and then the plan will be to move to mainnet and run for a fixed length of time. To be clear, though, to be clear on that is that this isn't an ongoing, once you're in, you're set for life and that's it, or you've missed the chance. This is very much testing the technology. That's why it's a trial, even the mainnet one, to prove that it works and to work out all these issues, but also the process itself, making it more robust. Things like DKGs are great, but they need to be tested and really well understood. So that's where we are today, and there will be new rounds of this.
And I think one important thing to add here is that just because maybe if you're hearing this for the first time, you're like, have I missed the boat? The answer is no, right? Because this is just the first cohort of many that we hope to onboard to Simple DVT in the future. And so, if you're an app validator hearing about this for the first time, keep an eye out, explore more, learn more about Simple DVT, because you'll have an opportunity to participate in the future as well.
Absolutely. So there's some links we'll share under this, the video, and with the X post as well, as to say, here's how to get involved, here's what channels to monitor, join the Lido Discord and things like that, just so that you're aware. Now, there's no, like, for this particular one, there's no bond requirement. There's nothing. This is just a trial to get started. So it really is a great opportunity, even if you're not particularly keen on the idea of validating for Lido, mostly through like lack of knowledge. If you're like, I don't know enough, or I've only heard from third parties, joining these trials would be a great opportunity to learn more and to actually understand. So through calls like this, we're trying to educate on like who Lido is, and putting faces to some of those, the kind of faceless protocol that is Lido, and then to break down those barriers and say, like, well, Lido does exist, and even though there are many problems and things that are being worked on to do with, let's say, like governments and dominance and various things like that, one of the things that does need to be worked on is the node operator set, because even in a perfect world where, depending on what you define as perfect, but like imagine a world where Lido was like 20% of the protocol, and it had dual governance, and it had lots of other barriers in place. It was a completely ossified protocol. All of these things that people say would be great. Even in a world like that, you still need more node operators. You still need to go from 30 to thousands. And on the other end of the spectrum, if Lido did get very big and was 60% of the protocol and had lots of other things, you'd still need more node operators. There's no world in which having more node operators in Lido is a bad thing for Ethereum.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. And it's more opportunity, right? And that's really what we want to promote in the node operator set, and not just opportunity for a select few, but opportunity for the many. And I think from that perspective, Simple DVT is exactly that.
And it is a great leveler. So if you join the Simple DVT trials, like, there will be opportunities to earn rewards, because when we move on to mainnet, those rewards will go to the people running the validators. So there is an economic incentive to do this without a bond. You just need a machine that can run. So the upfront cost would be like $1,000 to have the machine, or there's even lower costs, like a home node with that's been developed by Florin. He makes these really performant nodes for about $450, which are full spec nodes, mainnet capable chains that I'm running a few of around the world, and they are as performant as much more expensive NUCs that I have. So I would say don't also be put off by some of this lower cost hardware. Even I've got Obol DVT validators right now running on really cheap Raspberry Pis next to me. They're not running the full chain, but they are running the Obol client, and you can just run them against the chain. So I would say definitely look into like what is required for this trial, because it's probably lower than you think.
Lower than you think. Yeah, great point.
Okay, so that's talking through. We talked through DVT, talked about what Obol is. Coming to end now, is there anything else you'd like to say? In general, I think there's like Obol specific coming up that you want people to know about or to get involved with, or any way they can get involved in the Obol community.
Yeah, 100%. So, one of the things I wanted to take this opportunity is to highlight that, again, we built Obol as a DV middleware. And we felt that was the most synergistic way and Ethereum aligned way to build distributed validators. We're about to, or in the process of launching, our mainnet open beta. And part of that is, working with Lido and other liquid staking protocols to open up opportunities for people to run validators through distributed through DVs. But also, if you just want to stake on your own, our what we call DV Launchpad, which is kind of it's a dApp, it's a UI that allows people to set up new distributed validators, is going to be open and permissionless and available for people to use, capped at 1 validator. People can come in and start to run their own validator, set their own DVs if they want. This is going to be on mainnet. And of course, if you want to run on Gurley or Hurlesky, you can as well. In addition to that, we are also launching 2 developer-focused products, one called the Obol SDK and one called Obol Splits. And essentially, the Obol SDK is a way to programmatically integrate DVs into your staking product. And so if for example, if you're a staking service provider and you want to build DVs into your operator set, if you will, you can integrate that into now your UI, where somebody who's staking on your platform can basically choose in your UI an option to spin this up on Obol DVs, and behind the scenes, you can programmatically start and launch Obol DVs. And so what we're looking for is essentially a way to have the developer community as well start to build with DVs as part of their architecture. And I think this is a really important step because what we believe is that DVs should be kind of a standard for how validators are run in the future. It's much more resilient, much more secure. And so that's another aspect of this next phase for us, is to get more developers involved in the ecosystem of building products using DVs. And the final thing I'll say about Obol Splits is that's another kind of dev-centric tool that allows people to coordinate and automate the coordination of how rewards, principal, fees are kind of split without having to do that manually. And so that's another thing that will just help to kind of streamline the process of managing distributed validators. So yeah, I just wanted to make that known and available out there. And hopefully if you're a developer listening to this podcast and you're interested in DVs and building a staking product, reach out to us. We'd love to connect.
Yeah, it sounds like great resources. Thanks for sharing that. Like I said, all those Resource links we'll put in the description of this video and on the post that we make so everyone can get involved. And the easiest way is to head to obol.tech, which is the hub for everything Obol. So yeah. Well, that was great. I think we've covered everything we planned to. One of the things I've been saying is that this is just the start. This podcast series is going to continue and also come back to revisit people that I speak to now and ask, well, how's it been going and what's changed? So if we spoke again in a few months' time, it'd be great to see, well, how did the trial go and how is mainnet going and any things that come up that you didn't expect, and just to bring the community along with that journey.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would look forward to that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Brett. We'll catch up soon.
All right. Thanks, Eridian. Thanks for having me.
Speak to you later. Bye.